So whenever something really bad happens to you, it is worth asking yourself, is this good or bad? Because you don't actually know. Fast forward 10 years and this terrible thing might be the best thing that happened to you. To me, business is really two channels. It's the tactical business channel, how to build a business. It's also just the human emotional channel. You've got an interesting company? Fantastic, congratulations. You better tell a good story about it. And you better tell a story that other people want to be a part of.
Welcome to Trailblazers, the podcast where we sit down with contrarian tech leaders who found conventional success in unconventional ways. So today on the show, I am so excited to be joined by Jason Feifer. Jason is the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, where he spent nearly a decade studying and telling the stories of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. He's also a startup advisor, keynote speaker, and a nonstop optimism machine, which I can vouch for.
Thank you.
Just in our few minutes of hanging out. He's the author of the best-selling book, Build for Tomorrow, host of the hit podcast, Help Wanted, with over 1 million monthly downloads, and the writer of the weekly newsletter, One Thing Better, read by more than 70,000 leaders. LinkedIn has named him a top voice in entrepreneurship. Beyond media, Jason is the co-founder of CPG Fast Track, chief content officer for the business community Uncharted, and a trusted advisor to startups. He's delivered keynotes for global brands like Google, Microsoft, Pfizer, and Alibaba, just some small companies.
Sure.
Helping teams turn adaptability into a competitive advantage. And above all, Jason is a husband and proud father of two, bringing heart and clarity to everything he builds. Let's welcome Jason.
What a successful sounding guy that is.
He sounds like a cool guy.
Oh,
We should have him on the podcast.
You should, instead of me. Why'd you have me instead? He must have canceled.
He canceled, and now you're the replacement.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's way too busy. Well, I'm excited to chat with you. There's a lot of things we got going on. So let's start with, we like to get to a hard question first.
Okay. Hit me.
We're going to get to the meat of it.
Let's do it.
So a lot of this podcast, we like to talk about the not so great stuff, the hard times, the challenges. So I wanted to hear from you. What comes to mind first when I ask you about the hardest part of your journey so far?
Oh my gosh.
Personal or professional?
Wow, you're just coming right out of the gate.
We always do that. I gotta like loosen you up, you know?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people, they're so buttoned up, they're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
No, let's get to the hard stuff.
You know what? I really appreciate that. That is counter to what traditional interviewing technique is, which is like warm them up with some soft stuff.
Nope.
Yeah, but no, you're not.
Hardball, fastball, let's go.
You know what? It's funny, and I'm not stalling. I will answer that question. I have a really good answer, but I will tell you that I interview a lot of celebrities, and I have come up with this strategy for how to get good stuff out of them. And the strategy I call let the air out of the balloon, which is that when a celebrity comes into an interview, they're used to being asked the same questions and they have the same things in their head that they're going to tell you that they think that you want to know. And you really can't get to anything good until you let them get all that crap out. So it's almost like you got to sit down and let them go and just let the balloon out, all the stuff that they're bringing in. And then once they've told you all the things that they think you want to hear because you're just another person asking the same questions everyone else does, then you get to the good stuff. But I like that you're like, screw that. There's no balloon. We're going right to it. We're going to pop the balloon.
I don't care about, because everyone else knows the balloon stuff.
Right.
Like, that's my thing. I'm like, I don't know. A lot of people are so discoverable online. Someone could type you into ChatGPT and get a nice bio. Like, let's get into the stuff that maybe wouldn't come up there.
Okay, let's do it. Ready?
Let's do it.
So the hardest part of my journey was that I was sued for 5 years, and it sucked. If anyone's ever been sued, you have my deepest sympathies. If you've ever had to interact with the justice system in any way, which I put in quotes because I really don't believe that it serves any justice, then you have my sympathies. I was sued, and I was sued by someone who has a tremendous amount of money and was just feeling very vindictive that day. And it was really, really scary. I had actually at that moment decided to leave magazines. I've had a career in magazines, and I wanted to do other things. I was starting to do some celebrity ghostwriting, and I was going to do some consulting work. And then I thought, I can't, at this moment, with a 5-month-old child, I can't execute a career change where I'm not on salary somewhere. That was too scary. And one of my clients at the time was Entrepreneur Magazine. And they had asked if I would come on staff. I was doing some freelance editing for them, and I had always said no. But after the lawsuit, I said yes. And at the time, I'll be honest with you, I saw it as a way to just get some cover because it was scary and I was worried that my family's finances were going to be destroyed. My wife and I had a friend who's a lawyer who told us we should seriously consider getting divorced so that we can shelter our assets under her. Like, it was really scary. And this lawsuit went on for 5 years, by the way. So it was a nightmare for a long time. But as a result of that lawsuit, I made this decision to join Entrepreneur. And that changed everything for me, because until then, I had really been a media guy, and becoming a part of Entrepreneur Magazine and then sitting down with and learning from entrepreneurs transformed me into an entrepreneur too. I started to think about myself very differently. I started to pursue different opportunities. I define myself and my work in such a different way than I did before. And now, 10 years later, I mean, that lawsuit is long over. It all worked out
Thank
just
goodness.
fine for me. Yes, thank you.
Goodness.
And I have this entirely new life and identity and way of being, and infinitely more opportunities than I ever had before. And what I came to realize is that life is not linear. Life is reactive, which is to say that we are afraid of bad things because we think that if this bad thing happens, then the next logical bad thing will happen, and then the next logical bad thing will happen, and it'll be a spiral all the way downward. But that is not actually how life works. The way that life works is that something happens and it forces us to make decisions that we wouldn't have otherwise made before. That's why it's reactive. I wouldn't have taken the job at Entrepreneur Magazine. It wouldn't have made sense for me to do that unless something very disruptive and catastrophic happened to me. And that made me make that decision. And that decision ultimately led to positive outcomes. And so whenever something really bad happens to you, it is worth asking yourself, is this good or bad? Because you don't actually know. Fast forward 10 years, and this terrible thing might be the best thing that happened to you. I wouldn't wish a lawsuit on myself or anybody else, but I am so grateful for the lesson and the realization that life does not go in a straight path. Life is about choices, and it's about reactions, and it's about decisions, and that can take you anywhere.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I
Yeah.
know that was a very hard time. Now that you're 10 years past that or 5 years past that, whatever that horizon is, what's your relationship with the phrase, everything happens for a reason? Because I hear you saying, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to view every bad decision as this catastrophic downward spiral. But, the phrase of everything happens for a reason, at least for me, has always felt like, no,
I don't
sometimes
like
bad
that.
shit
No.
happens to good people, and it
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
sucks. So you're this optimism machine. I can
Right.
even tell talking to you for a little bit. What's your relationship with that phrase? And is there another phrase you use to describe these bad things?
Yeah. Well, I don't like the phrase everything happens for a reason because I find it disempowering. It's very passive. The reason will be revealed to you. All you have to do is continue along your journey and say everything. That doesn't work for me. I think that we are the product of the choices that we make. And in that case, I was making a choice. And that choice was to do something that, frankly, I didn't find that interesting at the time, which was join another magazine, but that I was doing for financial considerations. And then once I was there, I started to think, how do I maximize this opportunity? That's how I go into every circumstance. How do I maximize the opportunity? And I want to tell you about opportunity set A and opportunity set B. I'm saying that so that we come back to it, but let me finish by answering your question. So I don't like thinking of myself or anybody close to me or anybody I advise as being feathers in the wind. We're not. We make choices. And so the reason why it seems like everything happens for a reason is because ultimately we can make sense of challenging circumstances, and we can find value in purpose in any circumstance. When a bad thing happens to you, you shouldn't lay on the couch forever saying, oh, woe is me. You should get your ass up and do something about it. And that will ultimately create opportunity and value for you so that you can look back and say, I did something in that moment that created what I have now. That's not everything happens for a reason. That's you creating the reason. And I think that that's fantastic. You go create that reason. That's your mission. When something bad happens to you, you go figure out what the reason is, and then you make it happen.
I love that. Honestly, I feel like you should be like a fitness coach because you know how many people like sit and they're like, it's too hard to get up. I don't want to lift the weights. And you're like, no, you go make it happen. I feel like you would be great for that. I know that's not the career path you chose, but I just have to say if all things go haywire, it's not a bad idea.
I appreciate that. I would get laughed out of any gym. And so I do not think that I could be a fitness coach. But I appreciate that. I think that that's what so many fields from fitness to entrepreneurship all have in common, which is that no matter what you're doing, it really is all about how much are you able to commit and adapt. That's it. How much are you able to commit and adapt? That's it. I mean, look, my background is not in business. My background is in media. I worked at Men's Health for a bunch of years. I mean, I worked at Maxim magazine. What on earth am I doing giving anybody business advice? It's crazy. But the thing is that to me, business is really two channels. It's the tactical business channel, how to build a business. It's also just the human emotional channel. And both of those are important. You literally cannot win in business unless you have focused on and have some mastery over both. And what I came to realize early on in my time at Entrepreneur was that at the time, 10 years ago, I didn't know jack about business. I just couldn't have told you anything. Now, hopefully I can. But I realized I know people. That's been my whole career, has been sitting down and understanding people and then understanding how to take the things that they shared and make them meaningful to others. And I realized if I could just spend time absorbing the way that incredibly successful people think and calibrating myself to it and sharing it back to people, then I have something to offer this space while I figure out the tactical stuff. And that's the reason why I'm able to talk in the way that I am to business people. But you're right. You could totally drop yourself into a fitness place as well and say basically the same thing. And it is the same thing, because whether it's you're running a startup and you're nearly out of money and you've got to figure out what the hell to do, or it is you're at the gym and you're pushing yourself through these reps that you're low on energy on. Like in both cases, you have to look inside of yourself and say, what else do I have right now? Like, what else can I give to this? Where else can I find solutions? And that's not to say it's easy, but it is to say that it's all on us.
I love that. One of my favorite lines is, you can't change your mind with the mind. You have to change the mind with your body. And I feel like that is so much of what you're talking about. You have to take ownership. You have to take action. Before we move on to the next thing, I wanted to make sure I come back to opportunity set A and opportunity set B. Tell me more about that.
Okay, yeah. So that had come up because I was telling you about how when I go into any setting, I'm thinking about how to maximize it. I came to this realization very early on in my career, which was that in front of me, in front of you, in front of everyone who's listening right now, there are two sets of opportunities. Opportunity set A, opportunity set B. Opportunity set A is everything that's asked of you. So if you have a job and you have a boss and they expect things from you, you got to do that work or else you're going to get fired. That's opportunity set. Or you have a company and you have expectations from investors and from clients and from customers and whatever. That's opportunity set A. Do the thing that's asked of you. But then there's opportunity set B, and that is the thing that is available to you that nobody's asking you to do. And that could be anything and anywhere. That could be learning a new skill. That could be starting a podcast because you like podcasts. Nobody asked you to start this podcast, but you did it. My argument is opportunity set B is always more important. Always more important, infinitely more important. Because if you only focus on opportunity set A, then you're only qualified to do the things that you're already doing. But opportunity set B is where growth happens. That's where you discover new things that you can do, new things that other people want. It's when you start to evaluate, because of where you are and what you do, what other things are available to you that you're not even thinking about. This is where you find doors and walls. And this is what I have always done. So now at Entrepreneur, I mean, the past 10 years, I could have spent that 10 years just focused on Entrepreneur. That would have been perfectly appropriate to do. But, I showed up at Entrepreneur and I thought to myself, well, wait a second. I want to do right by this company. I really do. But also, I don't own this company. And at any time, this relationship could sever. But right now, I have this fancy title and people want to hear what I have to say. They trust that I have some authority, which is crazy, but okay. And they'll probably trust me to do other things. So can I get on stage and people will pay me to do that? Can I start getting involved in people's businesses? Will they take me any seriously? Can I start to build out my own media ecosystem and utilize the reach and authority of Entrepreneur to drive some of that audience to me so that I own that no matter what happens? These are opportunity set Bs. Nobody asked me to do that stuff. And I will tell you right now that I make significantly more income outside of entrepreneur than I do inside, because I spent all these years focusing on that. And whenever the relationship with entrepreneur ends, which I hope is not tomorrow, but I don't know, again, it's not my company, I have all these things. I carry these things with me because I was focused on that. So I ask everybody to not pour all of you into the things that are asked of you every morning when you wake up, because that's fine. And you need to do those things. But longevity lives elsewhere.
Wow, I'm telling you, you're such a motivational speaker. It makes sense that they're paying you to speak everywhere. What's your advice for the person? Let's say they're a head of marketing now at a hot startup. They're putting in 80 hours a week. They're grinding.
Yeah.
And they're doing all day, every day is opportunity set A. There's so much being asked of them. And the thought of even dipping their toe into opportunity set B is
exhausting.
Overwhelming.
Yeah.
I mean, the beauty of you being an editor-in-chief at Entrepreneur, and I know you weren't that just overnight, but you can make your schedule a little bit. The beauty of what I do, I'm my own boss. I make my own schedule. What's your advice for people that have families, maybe have 80-hour work weeks, and they know they want more? They know there's more out there. They know they want to bulletproof their career because they could get severed tomorrow. What's your advice for that person?
So, first of all, I'm really glad that you voiced that, because that's true. And it's easy for me to say all this now, but for whatever it's worth, I've been doing this my entire career. So I was doing this when I was making $50,000 a year working at Men's Health. And back then, what I was doing was I was freelancing for other magazines, the purpose of which was to drive more revenue to me, but also to build more relationships so that I was better connected in this industry. And I also started to teach. And I was teaching feature writing for Media Bistro, which I don't even know if that exists anymore. And I was trying to figure out what are the boundaries of my value and knowledge. And at the time, I thought of myself as a magazine writer, and so everything was kind of living in that space. Now I realize that I'm not a magazine writer, I'm a storyteller. And storytelling can happen in all sorts of different ways, right? It's happening when I'm talking to you, it's happening when I'm on stage. When a founder calls me up and they're freaking out and I'm on their advisory board, what's the first thing that I do? I think about how the thing that they told me is similar to the thing that somebody else told me 5 months ago, and I draw that connection, I tell them that story, and then I show them how that person resolved that issue, and then they feel better about it. So what does that person do who's working an 80-hour work week and is absolutely drowning in fulfilling opportunity set A? Well, look, number one is to do a real audit on whether those 80 hours are truly spent in the most efficient and productive ways. And are they really delivering the value that people are asking of you? Or is there another way to do that? I think oftentimes we just do things because we've been doing them. There's a line I like to use in my talk, which is, if something breaks in your home, you throw it away. But if something breaks in your business, you tend to keep it. Because, it's
That's
just
a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because, we hold on to it because it's part of our system now, or because we haven't had the incentive to think about how to change it. The way in which I have managed my own time is to add new commitments and then be forced to reconsider all my old commitments. So if I'm going to do this too, then I need to steal that time from something. Am I doing everything as efficiently as possible? Do I need to be the person that does all this stuff? Is there somebody else that can do it for me? Is there some way that I can create a team or find some collaborator or even spend a little money on something? What I can assure you is that there's fat in the system. There just is. If you're working an 80-hour work week, there's something that you could be doing that's more efficient. But also, here's the thing. If you are working that much and you feel like you are a cog in a machine, I have bad news for you. And that is that everybody around you is incentivized to keep you doing exactly what you were doing. They're going to be thrilled for you to do the exact same thing forever, because replacing you is going to be really annoying.
And expensive.
But that means that they're not really that incentivized to move you out of it, to think of you as anything more than the person who does that stuff that we're so happy that they do so that I don't have to do. And that's fine. That's a good grind when you're young and you're proving yourself. But what I have found over the course of my career is that the more in which, number one, you prove your value and then you show other people that they could lose that value because you have ambition and you're interested in more than the thing that you're doing, the more in which you're going to put them on some kind of notice that they need to keep you happy. And, like every company has like a flight risk list. You want to be on that you want to be on that flight risk list. That's a tongue twister. But I know that I have been in the past. I mean, when I left Men's Health, the managing editor pulled me aside and she told me, like, I told everybody that this was going to happen. You were on our flight risk list, and I knew you were going to leave. And I said, you got to give this guy more money. You got to give this guy more responsibility. And they didn't. And so now you're gone. Good. So you want to make sure that people know, but also spend time thinking about this. How can you make yourself singular? You know the reason why I am able to do all the things that I do at Entrepreneur? It's not because I have a fancy title. It's because I've made myself singular. Because there's value that I'm driving that, at least in perception, everybody's replaceable. At least in perception, I can only deliver. Or if you needed to find somebody else, it would be really hard. So because I am singular, because there are things that only I can do, there are a lot of things that now that nobody bothers me with, because at least I'm delivering that value. And that allows me to come and spend time here with you and to do all these other things. The more in which you can be recognized not as someone who does the thing, but rather as a singular talent, the more in which you have freedom and flexibility and you can start to explore. And one other thing I would add is, as you're thinking about what you're doing during those 80 hours, start to ask yourself, who am I interacting with? Are there ways in which I can open up those relationships more? Can I gain something more from those relationships? Can I learn something from that person? Can I start doing something with that person? Everybody is sitting at the intersection of opportunity, and most people are not thinking about it or focusing on it. They're just doing the thing that they usually do. But actually, everything around you is the bigger opportunity, and all the people that you meet are the bigger opportunity, and do not let that pass you by.
I love that. And I think this idea of being singular is so clear for you because you are and you have been, but for a lot of people that feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
What makes me an original? How do you figure that out? I think you do, you do your podcast, which is great. You do a lot of social content. How do you figure out what makes you an original? And then how do you get everyone to know that?
So the first answer of how you do it is that you just experiment. The thing that you are seeing me do right now is not the thing that I spent the last 30 years building. I did all sorts of weird stuff. I spent a couple of years at Fast Company. I was an editor at Fast Company. And my claim to fame back then was that I made a series. Did you remember single topic tumblers? Remember when that was a thing? Like 2013?
Yeah. Forever ago.
Yeah. Like I think like one of the most famous ones was women crying while eating salad, which was just a collection of stock photography of women crying while eating salad, which is a very weird genre of stock photography. Anyway, I made a series of those. The biggest one was called Selfies at Funerals. And it was just a collection. I just gone through social media, early days of social media, and I just found all of these mostly teenagers who were taking selfies of themselves at funerals, and I created a thing called selfiesatfunerals.com and or tumblr.com, I don't know, whatever it was. And that thing, I've never experienced anything like it. Still to this day. I mean, I literally hit publish on that thing. And then I walked away from my desk, and I came back an hour later, and Business Insider had written a post about it, and it was all over Twitter. And soon I'm getting calls from like around the world, Swedish newspapers and the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Everybody wanted to interview me about this crazy thing. And then for 2 years, anytime anybody was writing an article about selfies, because remember, selfies used to be like a word that was a new thing. Oh my God,
was
the
it
kids
like
today
Webster's Dictionary of the Word
yes,
of the Year or something?
It totally was. It totally was. It's like, what are the kids doing today, taking photos of themselves? All right, chill out. They've been doing that since the 1800s. But they would call me. So the New York Times would call me because they're writing about selfies.
We need to hear from the expert.
Yes, we need to hear from the expert. Like Weird Al Yankovic referenced selfies at funerals in a song. It was crazy. Am I the selfies guy right now? I'm not, because I couldn't figure out what to do with it. Like I made a thing and it was fun and I clearly tapped into something, and I made a couple other ones. There was like selfies at serious places and whatever, where like people were taking selfies at Auschwitz, terrible things.
Oh, and, wow, it's getting dark.
It's getting dark. And But I thought, do I want to be that guy? I don't know, but I've discovered something. I've discovered that I have an ability to recognize a moment and do something with it. And I tried on all these different personas, and I did all these different things. At Fast Company, I had a video series where I was basically like the young Andy Rooney, just complaining about stuff. What about this? Right? That's not my vibe, but I was trying it out. So to your question, how do you make yourself singular? The answer is just try a bunch of stuff. Like, see what what is the intersection of what people want and what you're good at? Like, what's the intersection of that? And the more in which you try it, the more in which you'll find things that you're good at, that people want, that you enjoy doing, that you feel like you can like kind of unfold. And then when you find the thing that really works, you just dig into it. And you know what you do? Look, everybody who's listening to this is in some way or another building a business, interested in building a business. If you know one phrase, thank you, Mark Andreessen, it is product market fit. Product market fit. Just think about yourself as a product. What's the market? Like, that's all I started to do. I was like, I'm a product. And that product is an optimistic, kind of high emotional intelligence, good speaking business guy who can talk about people. What's the market for that? Like, what is that? And I realized that, well, corporate conferences focus on change a lot because every company is going through change, every industry is going through change, which means that they need speakers on change. I can talk about change. I have a lot to say about change. That'll be the product market fit. So I built a product, which is me talking about change and how to navigate change and manage change. And now that's the thing that people hired me to talk about. I'm a product. You're a product. Everybody's a product. We're making products, but we are products ourselves too, and we just have to understand what the market is for us.
On Trailblazers, we spotlight founders who succeed by doing things differently, not by following the playbook, but by rewriting it. Many of those unconventional builders and the VCs backing them run on Brex because it helps them scale with speed and focus. From smart corporate cards and high-yield banking to AI-powered expense management, Brex gives startups the financial stack they need from day one so they can spend more time building and less time managing back-office operations. More than 30,000 companies, from breakout startups like Anthropic and Cursor to global leaders like DoorDash and Plaid, trust Brex to help them spend smarter and move faster. That's why we, as a venture firm and also the podcast, run on Brex too. Sign up at brex.com/trailblazerspod to get started and claim exclusive rewards. That's brex.com/TRAILBLAZERSPOD. RocketReach is the leading sales and lead intelligence solution trusted by sales, marketing, recruiting, and business development teams to grow their businesses. Whether you're looking for a developer halfway around the world, a C-level executive in New York, or a potential investor in Silicon Valley, we connect you directly. With RocketReach, you can easily access the most comprehensive, accurate compilation of emails and phone numbers on Earth. That puts you in front of the right people faster and backs you up with a database that reaches across industries, markets, and titles, using AI to continually improve the quality of your contacts. With RocketReach, you can reach anyone so you can reach higher. Many of you know I love cold outreach. It's been the root of many of my success so far, and this is the tool that I've used the whole time. Trailblazer listeners get 15% off any plan at rocketreach.co/trailblazers. That's rocketreach.co/trailblazers. I love that. And the idea too that you can have multiple products. Like one of your things is the speaking. It's also your like EIC role, and it's also your podcast. And it's also, there's a lot of different products, and you found the market for it. Yeah. Which is really interesting. What's your advice for a founder who sees your public persona, sees that you are able to grab attention, you're able to storytell, you're able to, I mean, if you started a company tomorrow, let's say, because you have such wide reach, because you are singular, you'd be able to hire whoever you want. Right. What's your advice for a founder who wants to replicate that, but they're busy finding product market fit and they're busy building their thing?
I understand that you're busy. You've got to be storytelling. You just do. People understand things through story way more than anything else. And they are motivated by story. One of the most impactful things that anyone ever told me was the president of Reebok, who told me this: we can't compete on quality. And he's not saying that Reebok isn't quality. What he's saying is that everybody's quality. That quality is assumed. Quality is table stakes. It's very easy to get quality right now. Manufacturing, no problem. He gives me this example. If we were making scissors, we could not market ourselves as the sharpest pair of scissors. Every pair of scissors is the sharpest pair of scissors. It's not possible to be sharper than the sharpest pair of scissors. So we have to differentiate ourselves on something else. We got to compete on more than quality. Quality is just the starting point. Now, his answer for Reebok was branding and storytelling and appealing to a specific audience. And I think that that is basically true for everything that we all do. You've got an interesting company? Fantastic. Congratulations. You better tell a good story about it. And you better tell a story that other people want to be a part of. And you better figure out how to tell that story. Put yourself on social media. Get on LinkedIn. Like, stop saying that LinkedIn is cringe. That's ridiculous. You're cringe for saying that. LinkedIn is the place where you can tell your story and where you're going to reach people. You need to put yourself out there. And I guarantee you that when you do and you become a person that others say, I like what they're saying, I like that vision, I want to join that vision, you will start to get better talent.
Absolutely. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I completely agree with you, and I think a lot of people need to hear this. A lot of venture is stuck in this like technical founders building in stealth, nowhere to be found online, great product, and they're missing the big picture that you can't compete on quality anymore. All software looks kind of the same.
Yeah.
And you need to have a story behind it. I wanted to ask you, is there anything, I mean, you've interviewed so many founders, obviously celebrities too, but a lot of founders.
Yeah.
Is there a through line between the ones that you think are really the most special? And this is maybe a leading question because I do think a lot of them do sort of have this like public facing persona where they write a lot of thought leadership, like a Sam Altman or a Brian Armstrong. They're sort of the face of a movement, if you will.
Yeah.
But is there anything else, either what I'm saying or something else that you feel like is a through line between a lot of the best founders that you've interviewed?
You know, as I talk to founders, I kept hearing this repetitive phrasing. This is going to sound really small, but I think that it's actually really important. And the repetitive phrasing sounds something like this. I remember talking to the founder of a baking mix company. And he said, you know, I don't sell baking mixes. I bring joy to people with sweet baked goods. I remember talking to the president of a cosmetics company. She said something similar. She's like, I don't sell cosmetics. I help people reclaim their sense of self. I started to think of these little phrases as the thing that does not change in times of change. What people were doing is that they were recognizing their transferable value, the thing that they have that they can offer that everyone always needs, such that if anything changes, if people suddenly hate baking mixes, if people suddenly don't want cosmetics, that they have just a new opportunity to do the thing that they already do best, because everyone always needs joy and everyone is always looking for their sense of self. And I think that when people fail, it is often because they have anchored themselves and their identity too closely to the way in which something had worked, to the tasks that they had performed, to the specific role or structure or function or something that was old that they thought was incredibly important. And the most successful people have a detachment from that, and instead they anchor themselves to flexible value. And I think that that allows you to do these remarkable kinds of pivots and to think really clear-eyed about what people want and what you can provide. You know, one of my favorite stories from the tech world, I'm sure you know very well, is that Stuart Butterfield built this video game company, and then the video game company was failing and he was going to return all of his investor dollars, and then he realized, oh wow, actually the internal chat function inside the video game is really useful. Maybe, and people really liked that. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's something that we build out of. And of course that became Slack. And you only do that if you are anchoring yourself not to the specific thing that you built, but rather to a mission to serve people and to look at what they're interested in and understand what you can build and deliver for them. I don't know what Stuart Butterfield ultimately was thinking, but I guess what's the difference between what's the overlap between a video game and Slack? In some way, it's about connectivity. Maybe he just thought, I'm not a guy who builds video games. I'm a guy who connects people. And if you think that way, well, then who cares about the video game? Let's just figure out how to connect people. And I see incredibly successful founders talk like that.
And they're able to do it so easily. Like, they're able to articulate it. You know, part of me thinks, oh, they're just media trained really well, which is part of it.
Yes.
You know, sometimes, especially like Series B or Series C, and like, oh, wow, they've been media trained.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just innate in who they are. And it sounds like for you, you kind of, even early on, you see that in some of the best founders.
Oh, yeah. You can totally see it. You can totally see it. And actually, I think that sometimes the people who are the most media trained are the least interesting because they become super on point and they don't know how to be mentally flexible. I see people who, I hate talking to these people when I'm in the interviewer role, which is someone who has memorized a bunch of talking points, understands exactly what it is that they want to say, and they're not all that interested in what the audience might want and the delta between the two. So there's hammering yourself into some kind of trained product, and then there's just intuitively understanding the need to connect with and understand people. And I would rather talk to that latter person all day, every day, even if it's a little rough and raw, than the person who keeps themselves inside of a box.
100%. And even I, as a listener, I mean, there's some people, I'm thinking of one person in particular, famous entrepreneur. I saw them speak on a podcast or heard them speak on a podcast and then saw them speak in real life. And I was like, this is the same talk. Like, I should leave. I want to ask you, you're the expert interviewer. You've been doing it now. Even before your current role, you were, like you mentioned, Men's Health and Maxim and Fast Company.
Yeah.
What's your favorite interview question? Is there one? I mean, we talked a little bit about, you said like airing out the balloon, right? Letting people throw out all their things. But then when you have them and you can ask them anything, is there one question that you always come back to that always gets you like a really spicy answer, or you love to ask any founder?
Yeah, there's not a specific interview question, but there's a specific interview question type.
Okay.
Because there are no magic questions. And the best questions are the ones that came in follow-up because you were deeply listening. That's it. I mean, when I go to interview anybody, even major celebrities, whether it's for the magazine or for a podcast or on stage in front of thousands of people, I don't go in with a list of questions, ever. I go in with an idea of where we might go and maybe the first thing that I'm going to say to them, but then I'm just going to listen close and I'm going to follow up. And it is always in the follow-up, whether you're interviewing somebody in a performative way or if you're just having a conversation with someone who you might want to work with, it's in the close listening and the follow-up where you're going to get real value. So the thing that I love to do the most in interviews, well, there are two things that I love to do the most. So I'll tell you one that builds off of that, and then I'll give you one other, which is that the thing that builds off of that is a trick that I learned from Ira Glass, the host and creator of This American Life.
Yep.
Which is to float a theory. So you can't do this at the very beginning of a conversation because you don't have enough information. But if you're listening closely enough to somebody over the course of a conversation, they will say something and you will mentally connect it to something that they said 15 minutes ago, and you'll come up with a theory. You know, it's so interesting that you said that, and I wonder if the reason why you feel that way is because you're actually feeling about this and you're trying to resolve that other thing that you said before, whatever it is. And it doesn't matter. This is the magic of the theory question. It doesn't matter if the theory is right or wrong, because all you're actually doing is getting them to respond and think out loud. And as they're doing it, they're going to be reacting to how well you thought and how you're making connections that they might not have. And I do this all the time, like in conversation. It's often the way in which I win people over. I mean, I remember I had lunch with the CEO, and it was just supposed to be a casual first time, you know, we'll have lunch and then we'll probably never talk again kind of lunch. And
was it just a tech company, the CEO, or
no, it wasn't. It was in the fashion space actually, okay. But like you know the brand, and she was telling me about how she had entered the company very young. She wasn't the first CEO; she'd taken over. And a lot of staff didn't take her seriously. And it was a smaller company back then. And so it was more reasonable that they would have hired somebody young. And it was really hard. And she struggled a lot to earn people's trust and to have the authority that she needed in that role. And over time, the people who didn't trust her left. And she brought in more people who saw her as the CEO, and she grew that company rapidly and strongly into the brand that it is now. And what I said to her was, you know, I have a theory. This is how I often tee up the theory thing, is to just tell them everything. I was like, I have a theory. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. But it sounds like what you did was walk into a company where you didn't really fit. And then instead of trying to figure out how to fit inside of that company, you just made it a different company where you were the leader. And she was like, that's exactly what I did. I had never thought of it that way. And the whole tenor of the conversation changed as a result. And we got more personal and we became friends. And now we get lunch like every 2 months. And it's like a wonderful relationship. And that, I think, happened because I showed her in the early parts of our conversation that I'm really listening to you. And I really want to understand you. And I think that if I listen closely enough, I might even be able to see something or say it in a way that you hadn't even thought. I do that with celebrities all the time, and they love it. It gets the greatest stuff out of them. The other thing that I do is if I want to get something real and personal out of someone, I first lead with something real and personal from me. So an example is I was sitting down and talking to The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and I wanted to hear, we were talking about his relationship to people and like his evolution of understanding what people want from him and what does he represent to people. And I said to him, I said, I wonder if there's a moment in which you had to figure that out by getting it wrong. And I said, let me tell you what I mean. I said, I once went and I spoke at this event, and afterwards people started coming up to me. And there's this guy who he had bought my book. My book was on sale at the event. And he came over to me, and he had a copy. He bought my book, and he had a copy of his book, which was a self-published, genre crime novel or something like that. And he handed it to me, and he said, I'll read your book if you read mine. And the words that popped out of my mouth were something like, I don't have a lot of time to read, but if I have the time, I'll check it out. And I don't know why I said that. It's because, I guess honestly, it's because I don't have a lot of time to read, and I probably wasn't going to read it. But what a dick thing to say. What a terrible thing to say. What an awful thing to say. And it was so ungracious. And it didn't meet the moment, and it didn't meet his expectations of me. And as soon as I said it, I felt awful. And I regretted it. And I wish I could track that guy down and apologize. But the moment was gone. And I said to myself afterwards, I said, every single time someone comes up to me and asks me for anything or assumes anything of my time, no matter what, I will be gracious. Like, I will be gracious. And I've carried that forward. So that's what I told The Rock. And because I told him that story, he told me one too, where he was in his early days as a wrestler and he was transitioning into acting, and he was out to dinner with his business partner, and this couple comes over and they're like, oh my God, Dwayne, we really love your work. Can we get an autograph? And he was having a really bad day, and he gives them this big huff. And then he quickly signs, and as he's doing it, they're starting to apologize. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. And they walk away. And as soon as they do, he and his business partner, Danny Garcia, they realize what a terrible moment that was. And they start to dissect it from that couple's point of view, where they're going out to dinner, and maybe they got a babysitter, and this is the one date night a month. And they see across oh my God, is that Dwayne Johnson? Is that Dwayne Johnson? I love Dwayne Johnson. Should we talk to him? No, we shouldn't talk. Well, but this is the only time that we might ever talk to Dwayne Johnson. And they worked up the courage to go over to him. And then they were greeted with, and what Dwayne said was, these were his exact words. He's like, what a lucky son of a bitch I am that somebody wants to come up and ask for my autograph. What a lucky son of a bitch I am. And it changed him. And he realized the same thing that I realized in that moment, which was, I will always be gracious. I will always be gracious. And I love that story, and it really personally connects with me. And I wouldn't have gotten it out of him unless I led with my version of it. So The two kinds of questions are the theory question to ask really deeply, and the question in which if you're going to ask somebody to open up, you do it first, because then you create the model for them to follow.
I love it. This is your stories too. You know you're a good storyteller, but I'm going to reiterate it back to you. The stories are what are going to stick.
Yeah.
Because as you're saying this, we all know, mirroring is a big thing. And,
yes.
It's nice to mirror back what other people are telling you, repeat after them, or start with the story so then they do the same.
Mm-hmm.
But you know this, but your secret sauce is your ability to tell stories. And I think a lot of our listeners are not going to forget those two interview types. So thank you for doing that.
I appreciate that. Let me tell you why I do that.
Yeah, tell me.
So number one, it's because I know my strength. I'm a storyteller. And as I went from traditional media into this kind of stuff, I realized, well, like, what is the thing that I can bring to it? And it's like, I know how to tell a story. I'll lead with story. But then I realized that the more in which I told a story and then paired it with a takeaway or an outcome or something, the more in which people remembered it. And then I had a really fascinating conversation with, I wish I could remember her name, she's a professor who studies how people learn, how we learn. And she told me that the way in which we learn is that we attach new information to a scaffolding, that's her word, a scaffolding of existing information. So the reason that you could learn something new in the world of venture, I don't know, whatever, right? Somebody tells you something and you remember it. The reason is because you have a deep and complex scaffolding in your mind of how this world works. And so you know exactly where to take this new information and affix it to old information. That's how we remember things. But if you, open up Apple News and read a fascinating story about black holes, but you don't know anything about astronomy, you will not remember that thing 5 seconds later because you don't have the scaffolding. So how do we create quick scaffolding? The answer is we tell stories, because stories are memorable. Stories are how we understand the world. We are narrative creatures. We understand our lives and other people and our way through the world in the form of narrative. We're constantly creating a narrative about ourselves. We understand other people through narrative. And so the more in which we tell stories, the more in which people have an orientation point and they're going to remember it. And so if I just told you the interview technique, you'd say, that's really smart, and then you wouldn't remember it. But if I tell you a story about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, you'll remember that because that's a natural thing for you to remember, and it creates scaffolding in your mind, and then we're going to attach the idea of the interview technique to it, and that's the way in which you're going to remember it. So I do this now for everything. Hot tip for anyone. Start a sales call with a story. Start a sales call with a story. Don't start with the pitch. Start with a story that is relevant to how valuable you are. When I start a sales call for keynote speaking, here's what I do. I tell them, look, before we begin, I just want to tell you, 2 years ago, I got on stage at a conference. It was a risk management company, billion-dollar risk management company in Vegas. And I give this talk about, change and how to navigate change. And afterwards, there's a question and answer session. And this guy named Gary raises his hand. He's the first guy. And I call on him, and he stands up, giant beard, old guy. And he says to me, "Hi, I'm Gary. I retired a number of years ago, but I continue to come to the conferences because it's just a good way to catch up with old colleagues. So I've seen people like you on these stages for decades. And I don't really have a question so much as I just want to tell you that you're the first person I've ever seen to get up and not just cheerlead, but to actually give us practical, tangible things to use. And I really appreciate that." And I told Gary that I really appreciated him saying so. And the reason I want to tell you that story is because to me, that's what success is. Success is that I showed up and I did something that was memorable, but more important, that it was actionable. So that when I leave, people are still talking about the things that I shared with them. And then they go back to work and they're using the things that I told them. That's success to me. Now, why am I telling them that story? I'm telling them that story because if I didn't tell the story and I just said the thing, here's what success means to me. That sounds obnoxious. But I told them the story. And so now they're picturing Gary with the big beard. This is all true. Like, I didn't make this story up. This is true. And also, it tells them exactly what they want to hear. Because I know that that's what they're looking for. I know that's what event organizers are looking for. So by leading with the story and bringing to life exactly the thing that they want me to do for them, I make it more memorable that it happened at all. Storytelling is how you get people to remember things.
I love it. And I love this idea, too, of having built-in proof.
Yeah.
Like someone like a Gary has been going to this conference for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's seen it all.
Right.
Just like probably these event organizers have seen all the different potential keynotes. And Gary's belief in you being the best so far can translate then. And it's probably pretty easy for them to go, okay, well, if Gary thinks that he was the best that's ever been, he might just so be the best that's ever been, you know?
Right, yeah.
And I think that's also such an important piece of it. It's like the scaffolding, but it's also credibility.
Yeah.
I think it's a big part of it. And, not being cocky and peacocking about it and being like, oh, I'm so amazing, but doing it in these like subtle, thoughtful ways. So then people now go, like even I'm going to go through my life now. And if someone asks me for a speaker, I'm like, actually, Jason, someone said he was the best of all 30 years,
This retired guy.
This retired guy, Gary, big beard. But, it's smart, not just storytelling for storytelling's sake, but to insert your credibility. If you work in venture or startups, you know the constant juggling act. Replying to messages from co-investors, founders, LPs, customers, and teammates, all hitting your personal number. I know this very well. We all hand out our cell, which means your EA can't help an iMessage, and important threads get buried. That's why I'm very excited about Quo, formerly OpenPhone. It's built for founders and investors like us who want communication that feels personal but stays organized. Quo gives you a dedicated business line on your existing cell phone. And if you already have a business number, you can bring it with you for free. Plus, you'll get call summaries, transcripts, and an AI voice agent called Sona that can answer and schedule when you're offline. We're actually cooking up something fun with the Quo team right now and using that same voice AI tech in a new way for our firm. More soon, but it's a great reminder that you can use voice AI to stay top of mind of your customers' needs. Quo is trusted by over 90,000 businesses and rated @1 on G2 for customer satisfaction. You can get 20% off your first 3 months at quo.com/trailblazers. That's quo.com/trailblazers. So I've actually used Gusto at 3 different companies, and every time it's been such a relief. It's simple, it's reliable, and my paycheck was always on time, no drama. And unlike the big clunky payroll systems out there, Gusto is online payroll and benefit software specifically built for small businesses. It's all-in-one, remote-friendly, and incredibly easy to use, so you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. For smaller startups in particular, I have found that it's the most affordable and easy to set up option, and it's the one that we recommend to all of our startups at our firm. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/trailblazers and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/trailblazers. One more time, gusto.com/trailblazers. Jason, I could keep talking to you forever, but I do have to wrap this up with our lightning round.
Let's do it.
I do have a million more questions, but we'll do our lightning round.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch.
We'll keep in touch, yes. Okay, so we call these our Trailblazer trade-offs.
Fantastic.
So give me whatever comes to mind first. I might push you, though, for more of an answer.
Okay.
Okay.
As you can tell, I'm not good with short answers.
I know. It's okay. I don't like short answers either.
Good.
Okay. Book in hand or podcast in ears?
Podcast in ears or audiobook in ears. I don't know.
It's ears. It's ears is
ears.
the answer.
I got destroyed. I don't know. The technology destroyed my ability to look at a book, but I love consuming.
And do you have a favorite podcast or a favorite audiobook lately?
Your
own. Shout out.
Shout out to me and Help Wanted, the podcast. I recently, it was like a year and a half ago, but I still think about it more than anything else. I blew through Three Body Problem, the trilogy of Three Body Problem. Do you know what it is?
I don't.
Oh my God. I cannot suggest
You're giving me lots of recs today. I appreciate it. I know.
Take notes.
I really am.
No, it's I don't know, the list of recommendations in this episode are going to be long. It's so wide-reaching that I don't even know where, but I'll start with this. There is there's a society on another planet, and they are coming to invade Earth, and they're 400 years away, and they have sent these little things that disrupt our ability to innovate in science. So we know that they're coming. And if we had 400 years to prepare, we could stop them, but they have hindered our ability to develop science any further. What do we do? And over 3 books, it becomes a theory of everything. It is the most expansive, ambitious piece of fiction I have ever experienced, and I cannot stop thinking about it.
Wow. How long ago did you read it or listen to it?
A year and a half ago. I mean, I've consumed a lot of books since then, but
that one stands out.
That's what I still think about.
Wow. Well, I will say I'm not a big science fiction person, but now you're convincing me. Maybe I got to give it a shot.
It really is wonderful.
It really is wonderful. Okay, amazing. We will add it to our show notes. Morning person or night owl?
I'm a night owl, by nature, but because I have 2 little kids and a wife who insists that we go to bed at a reasonable time, I am now waking up much earlier than I ever had during my life, and I'm finding that it's very productive. So I'm a night owl posing as a morning person.
Love it. There's definitely all those tests that you can take where it'll tell you what you naturally are. I think like one's called like a wolf, one's called an owl.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes sounds like you are naturally night, but you're now having been forced to be early.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not so bad because what I found is that I'm most creative and I think fastest in the morning. So I've structured my days now so that I block out, like, if I can help it, nobody can book a meeting with me from like 9 to 11, noon if I can get away with it. And that's when I make everything. So that's when I do all my writing, and that's when I do all my creation. And then the latter part of the day where I'm not thinking as fast, that's for calls and meetings and stuff.
I love it. That's what these tests help with. That helps you understand your flow state. 'Cause I think that's so much of it is understanding when you're on. And when you're doing these speaking things, you got to be whip smart and on, you know?
Sure do.
Cooking dinner or ordering in?
Fun fact about me, I don't have a sense of taste or smell. It's not a COVID thing. It's my entire life. So
Not even a little bit?
no, not even a little bit. Well, so it depends on how you want to understand the word taste. So taste, people usually think of as like, oh, I taste chocolate. You don't taste chocolate. What you taste is sweet, because taste is actually just sweet, salty, sour, bitter. It's just your tongue. And then you're actually smelling the chocolate inside of your face. It's your olfactory nerves. And that is what creates the sensation of flavor. So it's sweet is a taste, and chocolate is a flavor, which is what you're smelling. So my tongue works just fine. I get sweet, salty, sour, bitter. I can tell you that a potato chip is salty, but I can't tell you that ice cream is chocolate. I can just tell you that it's sweet, and that's been my whole life. And
do you know why that is?
Probably because I fell out of a stroller as a child. That's the leading theory. When I was in college, I was dating a girl who had an amazing sense of smell and taste, and she was the first person to press me on, ooh, what is that? Is that rosemary? And what is? And eventually I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. And so we did a taste test where I just closed my eyes and she gave me different ice creams, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. I couldn't tell the difference between any of them. And then we realized, wow, something's wrong. And then I didn't do anything about it until many years later, where I was washing dishes we were together for a number of years, where I was washing dishes in our kitchen. And a George Foreman grill, because we were in our 20s, it started smoking, like it had caught on fire. And she smelled it from across the apartment, and I was literally next to it, and I didn't smell it. And I was like, now it's time to find out if there's a way to fix this, because that's dangerous. So
Yeah,
I went to the Taste and Smell Clinic in the University of Connecticut, and they did 3 days of multidisciplinary testing, because if you don't have a sense of taste and smell, if you don't have a sense of smell, the taste is really a byproduct of that. If you don't have a sense of smell, it could be anything from nasal polyps to a brain tumor, like literally anything. So they're looking for cause. And if they find no cause, which in me they found no cause, then it's really coming down to 3 things. It's either chemical exposure, it is head trauma, or it is upper respiratory infection that just like really got up there. And I told my parents that, and they were like, head trauma, because a babysitter like was strolling me around in a stroller, hit a bump or something. I fell out. I landed on my head. I was in traction. That's probably what happened. Who knows? But anyway, the point is that I don't know how to cook a thing, because I can't smell it and I can't taste it.
It probably tastes pretty bad if you're like putting random things in it.
Oh, yeah, it'd be terrible.
Know.
Nobody would ever want to eat anything I cook. So my wife is a wonderful cook, and she makes food, and I pretend that that it matters. But she knows that really and truly I can't taste any of it. And so I like when she cooks, and then I clean, because that is actually when I listen to my audiobooks.
I love it. And cleaning is so therapeutic. I'm a big cleaner versus cooker too. But that is a crazy fun fact.
Isn't it?
I had no taste or smell during COVID for a little bit, and it was really the most traumatic month of my life.
Welcome to my world.
And I have a lot of empathy. I have a lot of empathy.
Thank you.
And I have empathy for your wife too, who you probably are like, I think this is good. I don't know.
Yeah. But she will list all the advantages. The advantages include, we go out to dinner and she can just order 2 things off the menu, and I'll eat the one that she doesn't like. We used to, when I had to stop drinking because it was interrupting my sleep, but we used to get 2 cocktails and I would just drink the one that she doesn't like. I changed all the diapers, or at least most of the diapers, because I couldn't smell the poop.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So yeah, there's advantages.
There's benefits. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's funny. I'm glad that she's like a whole list
that
she can share. She can rattle off when people ask. That's so good. Okay, VC or bootstrapping?
Let me tell you a perspective of what I tend to write about in Entrepreneur, or what I tend to direct coverage on in Entrepreneur, which is that I generally am more interested in writing about bootstrapped companies. And the reason for that is because depending on how much money you've raised and the expectations of those investors, you don't have to think about profitability for a while. And that liberates you from the constraint of every other kind of business. And I know that Entrepreneur is reaching a very wide range of entrepreneurs, very, very wide range. And I kind of feel like a jerk telling them the story of this company that raised $100 million and is now like trying this or that, and they're doing all this stuff, and they're not actually profitable, but look at all the things that they did. And I can picture someone who is bootstrapping, seething with rage and being like, I am not interested in the lessons of that person at all, because they're operating under completely different constraints than me. Which is not to say that running a company where you've raised $100 million is easy. I know that it's not. And now it carries all the expectations of those investors. So I'm not saying anything here more than, for storytelling perspectives, I tend to like the bootstrap stories more than the venture funded stories.
Absolutely. And it makes so much sense too. You have such a wide readership,
yeah,
that it's almost a responsibility to say it. Yeah, I totally hear you. Networking dinner or big conference?
Huh.
You're a good person to ask this to.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I only like being at a conference if I'm on the stage. I otherwise have no interest in a conference. But I also kind of have no interest in a networking dinner. What I really like are intimate gatherings. So if I can choose an option 3, the thing that I'm really craving at this phase of my life is deeper relationships and connections. I go to an event, whether it's a networking dinner or a conference, and I meet a lot of people and we bump a lot of phones, and then I instantly forget who they are and we never follow up, and what was the point of that? But if I have a friend in town who says, hey, I'm going to bring 3 people together and I think you're all going to get along, that's where lifelong friends are made. And so I really like that. I work with you mentioned it in the intro, I work with this community called Uncharted, which
I know it.
Oh, you know it?
Of course.
Oh,
yeah.
Of course you do. So Uncharted is amazing. It was co-founded by Noah Friedman and Michael Loeb. Michael Loeb is a billionaire who invented automatically renewing magazine subscriptions, which is such a fun fact. And
I didn't know that about Michael.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting lore.
That was his first big hit.
Wow.
And so they bring together people for all sorts of kinds of events. But my favorite are these dinners where they invite 20 people around this very nice table at Michael's townhouse. Have you been?
I was supposed to go very recently. I have not been yet, though.
Okay, I'll get you on.
Get me on. Yeah, he does a lot of those, so I get hit up for those a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we got to get you on. So they're great, and I now host some of them myself, and I like being in that seat and kind of directing the things. As you can tell, I like to talk, and but I really like to connect, and I like to listen, and I love an intimate format like that where everyone's listening and everyone gets to understand and know each other, and then real connections are made. That matters to me a lot more than here's a business card or here's a bump.
Yeah, hard to find that though. Hard to find that quality of connection, and hard to find those people who want to do that connecting. Sounds like you're that person though. You like to do it.
I do.
Amazing. Hire slow or fire fast?
Fire fast, and that's coming out of some early mistakes that I made as a leader at Entrepreneur, where I sat on the wrong person for too long. Probably not the right way. I didn't physically sit on them, but I knew that they weren't the right person.
You believed in the wrong person.
I sat on it for too long,
yeah.
and it it created a lot of tension in the team, and then when I finally got up the courage to let that person, there were really 2 of them, progress was finally allowed to be made, and I realized that you are doing absolutely nobody a service, not yourself, not the person who you're ultimately going to have to let go, and certainly not the team that is waiting for you to take action and is dealing with whatever dysfunction is being created and is wondering why this kind of thing is being tolerated. You're doing nobody a service by sitting on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard though, especially those first few times when you have to do it. You don't want to believe that you have to let them go.
Yeah.
Okay, great. 10 small wins or 1 big moonshot?
10 small wins. I've built I just feel like I'm here with you right now because of small wins. Like there was never one big moonshot. Nothing ever feels, if you're doing it right, if you're building your career or your company in the right way, you never feel like you win the lottery. Even the big ones. Like when I became editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, I mean, like, okay, big deal, but it didn't feel like I won the lottery. It felt like I busted my ass and moved my way up and up and up and up and up to the point in which I was ready for that kind of opportunity. And I just don't think that most of the things that people accomplish that feel really big don't feel big to them. And the reason is because they small stepped their way there and it just looked really big from the outside. So big moonshots are great. God bless. Good luck. But I see it as small wins.
Absolutely. And I think also in hindsight now you can look at that selfies at funerals thing and your lawsuit and all these other things that felt so big at the time and maybe felt like it would be your big moonshot for better or worse. And actually they were all just little small wins or small losses, Yeah.
That's a nice way to actually kind of frame a little. You could have framed that as a theory.
I have this theory. Yeah. I have this theory that what you're doing. I love it. Practice what you preach.
Yeah.
Being early or being right?
Being early or being right? Being right. When I first became, before magazines, I was a local newspaper reporter. And I remember one of the first conversations that I had with my editor at the Worcester Telegram and Gazette in central Massachusetts, where I was a general assignment reporter. His name was Mike Elfland. And Mike said, look, we want to break news, but we don't want to be wrong. And it is worth waiting an extra day to make sure that we've got it right versus rushing to print something that we're going to have to correct. So don't shoot from the hip. Make sure you got it. It's okay if you wait an extra day. And I thought that was really good advice. I would much, much rather wait and get it right than just rush towards something.
Especially in media where it lives forever. I mean, we've all seen the headlines that have to be sort of retracted and adjusted.
Yeah. And right. And it's like, yeah, totally. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Like, look, there's that's not to say that I don't also believe in like Reid Hoffman's, if you aren't embarrassed by your first product launch, then you launch too late. Like, I think that's a wonderful perspective. Get it out there, get it early. That's about learning and revising. And that is a beautiful thing about business that doesn't exist in media, where in media, you make a thing and you put it out there, and then it's the product, it's the object, and it's functionally unchanging. Whereas business is a constant evolution. Your product is a constant evolution. There's so much freedom and flexibility in that. I find it so appealing. And in that way, then be early. Be early. Get something out before it's perfect, just so that you can get people to start to react to it. Because that's the only way to make something that is right.
Totally. But it's interesting, too, how, your answer would be one way with media and one way with business.
Yeah.
You live at the intersection of both, so you're able to answer.
Yeah. I guess it depends on the permanence of the thing that you've put out in the world.
Absolutely. Okay, we have two more.
Sure.
Never post on socials again or never fundraise another dollar again.
Well, I've never fundraised $1. And so
But you never can, even if you want to. Like start a fund tomorrow or start a company tomorrow.
Well, in my own personal experience, I would happily not do that. And that's because, well, I don't know, that sounds very stressful and I haven't had to do it, but also because I've seen so much value in social media. And to go back to the thing about being singular, one of the ways in which you become singular is that you attract a bunch of people who see you as singular. And when you do that, it creates validation in every other channel. Somebody said this really interesting thing to me once, which was, they said, if you aren't being taken seriously at your company, go get taken seriously on LinkedIn. Because as soon as people take your work seriously on LinkedIn, the people in your company are going to see that and they're going to start taking you seriously. Isn't that interesting? It's totally true. And that's the magic of being able to reach exponentially large numbers of people. Social media has a lot of bad stuff and blah, 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 blah. But if you want to use it with intention, it can be an incredibly powerful tool.
I love that. And life is all about social proof, honestly. We're kidding ourselves if we say otherwise. And yeah, seeing 100 likes on your coworker's post is like, wait, maybe I should listen to their advice too.
Exactly. It's crazy.
I love it. All right, last question.
Yes.
AI overhyped or underhyped?
AI overhyped. AI overhyped. I think that AI is a microwave oven. And here's what I mean by that.
I was going to say, another story. Here we go. Let's hear it. Give me the scaffolding.
Yes.
Give me the scaffolding.
Here it is. AI is a microwave oven, which is to say that a microwave oven is incredible technology. Mind-blowing technology. Try to explain a microwave oven to someone from 100 years ago. You can't. You can't even start. And we all have it in our homes. It's everywhere. But you don't cook every meal in the microwave. Instead, over time, we have found what the microwave is for and what it's not for. And we know that it's really good at reheating pizza and really bad at making a steak dinner. And therefore, it fits into our world very cleanly and clearly. We are in the experimentation phase of AI. We don't really know what it's for yet. We found some things, but we're trying it out on everything. And we're saying AI is going to do this and AI is going to do that. And then everybody says, oh my God, AI is going to replace this and AI is going to replace that. No, it's not. We're just trying. And most of it's not going to work. Or it's going to work a little bit, or it's going to be supplemental to this other thing that we used to do. I don't think that AI 10 years from now is going to be doing nearly the amount of things that we say it's going to be doing right now. But it will also be doing lots of things that we couldn't have even pictured right now. We will eventually know what the microwave is for and not for, or rather, we will eventually know what AI is for and not for, just as we learned what the microwave is for and is not for. And we're not there yet. So right now, it's overhyped. That's not to say that it's not amazing or transformative, or that some of these companies that are built off of AI right now won't be the next billion-dollar companies. But is it going to do everything that we think? It will not. And only time will tell.
Absolutely. I think with all technologies, you can't even predict what's going to actually work and what's not. So it's a fun waiting game for all of us.
You cannot. And if anybody says that they know what's going to happen, they're lying. And that's just, of course, the course of human history and innovation is people making extremely bad predictions about what technology will do. Because we always overshoot what the impact is going to be, in part because we see new technologies as being forces of replacement. And they're not. They're generally forces of integration. So they get built into the way that we do things instead of replacing the old way that we do things. You got to remember, we have the bicycle, even though we also have the car. We still have radio, even though we also have television. There are ways in which the old thing and the new thing coexist, and they find their place in our worlds. And we just aren't there yet with AI.
You know what my analogy is with the Met Gala? We have our TikTok celebrities that are new and hot and cool, but we also still have like Angelina Jolie.
Right.
You know, we still have our old Hollywood actress. Anyway, Jason, thank you for being here. This was so much fun.
It was so fun. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
On Trailblazers, we're always talking about multiplying your impact, and that's exactly what Athena helps you do. Athena pairs you with a world-class executive assistant who becomes a true force multiplier for your business and your life. Working with my Athena assistant has been transformative. Gab was instrumental in raising Park Rangers Capital's fund in ways that I could have never imagined an assistant could contribute, from closing six-figure checks to identifying new LPs we should meet to matching my tone perfectly in follow-up emails. He's elevated my capacity as a founder by giving me more time to focus on the highest leverage work. Athena isn't just about scheduling meetings, it's about unlocking leverage. Hundreds of founders, investors, and executives trust Athena to free their time and scale their impact. Athena is offering our listeners $2,000 off for their first year of service and priority onboarding. And you want that, trust me, there's a very long wait list. When you're ready to multiply your impact and free up time for the things only you can do, go to athenago.me/Erica-Wenger. That's athenago.me/ERICA-WENGER. Thanks so much for listening to the Trailblazers podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. You can also support our work by sharing it with a friend or leaving a quick review. It helps more contrarian builders find us. For more on Park Rangers Capital and our community of elephant founders, head to parkrangerscap.com or find me online at Erica_Wenger. Until next time, keep trailblazing.